Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, youth delegates, and all of those following us on live stream. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. We are live today with you from Doha, Qatar. Welcome to the LDC5 Inter-Generational Dialogue. My name is Dana Khaled Lanazi. I'm a Strategic Partnerships Senior Specialist with the Education Above All Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us at the LDC5, the 5th United Nations Conference on the Least Developed Countries. LDC5 was created to shape a new pathway for the world's 46 least developed countries to deliver the Doha Programme of Action and achieve a better, more sustainable future for all, especially the most vulnerable and hardest to reach. This intergenerational dialogue has been created to discuss the vital role of young people as agents of change and a driving force to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. The young people of the LDCs are facing multiple compounding challenges, including high youth unemployment and illiteracy rate, aggravating inequality, social discontent, conflict, and poverty. They are also suffering the impacts and uncertainty of COVID-19 and climate change. This exposes them to poverty, further social exclusion, and prevents them from fully developing their potential, hindering opportunities to positively engage in their communities. We must, however, recognize that young people themselves can be the solution to this, if they are meaningfully included, not just as beneficiaries, but as right holders, agents of change, and key stakeholders of progress. This intergenerational dialogue is a platform to showcase this. Now, without further ado, allow me to introduce the first speaker, Ms. Rabab Fatima, High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, and Secretary General of the 5th United Nations Conference on the Least Developed Countries. High Rep, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, and my very dear friends, dear youth delegates. It sounds a little bit formal. I was expecting a little bit of a chatty environment, but I'm now standing here and making a very formal statement. But let me stick to my script. It's wonderful to be here with all of you for the opening of this very important meeting. Intergenerational dialogue is essential to achieve sustainable development and to create a better future for all. I think we all agree on that. As the UN Secretary General reminded us and reminds us constantly, the young people are at the forefront of all our efforts to secure a more inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous future for us all. For our purpose today, the meaning of his words is simple. If young people are not meaningfully included in our work, the goals we set in the Doha Programme of Action and the 2030 Agenda will remain unfulfilled. Such are the complex and long-standing challenges faced by the LDCs that it is only by working together across generations that we can hope to make lasting progress. We must listen to the voices of young people and include them in the decision-making process and in follow-up actions, as they are the ones who will be the most affected by the outcomes. I know that in our panel today we have heads of UN entities, we have ministers and other high officials, and I hope that there will be good conversation on that and how they can be involved in every stage of our conversation. It is a space, I believe, that we'll have today for young change makers and decision makers to share ideas and to find a common vision and create a new, stronger partnership to act together when you're back in your own countries. As we know, the least developed countries face numerous challenges, including poverty, underdevelopment, environmental degradation, and economic instability. These challenges are often interconnected and requires a comprehensive approach to address them. It would be unreasonable to expect one sector, one organization, or indeed one generation to have all the answers to such a complex situation. By engaging in intergenerational dialogue, we can create a more holistic understanding of these challenges, and we can develop innovative and systematic solutions to address them. To this end, I'm excited to see the emerging youth declaration entitled For All Generations that will be presented to the final plenary. The declaration has some key aims which I know will inform some of your discussions today, such as to ensure young people are engaged in the LDC5 decision-making process, that the Doha Programme of Action for the LDCs addresses the development needs of young people in the face of emerging challenges, and to empower youth in furthering progress towards targets and goals of the Doha Programme of Action. The declaration reflects your vision for a better future and your commitment to delivering on the promises of Doha. Excellencies, my dear colleagues and my dear friends, in the context of the least developed countries, intergenerational dialogue is even more critical. Most of the LDCs have a disproportionately large youth population, and it is crucial to engage them in the development process. By empowering the young people, we can create a new generation of leaders who are committed to creating positive change in their communities. We can also ensure that the policies and programs put in place are tailored to the needs and aspirations of the young generation, which will create a more sustainable future. It was always our ambition, dear friends, for this conference to bring together every part of the society, every decision maker, the private sector, youth, civil society organizations, and every other stakeholder to ensure that no voice was unheard, no idea untested, and no generation left behind. It is in this positive ethos of inclusivity that I hope we can all embrace in this and other events here in Doha. It will take all of us working together to give the LDCs the chance to move from potential to prosperity, and I believe that is possible. I hope that the discussions we have here will be fully reflected in the final outcome that will come from the Youth Forum, and I look forward to seeing the outcome and hearing your ideas. Dear friends, my dear young friends, we have a very powerful panel of discussions, the decision makers here, both from the government and from the UN. I have three of my favorite ladies from the UN here. The president of the ECOSOC, as you all know, Ambassador Lachezara Stoeva, an extremely powerful person. She now presides over one of the organs of the United Nations. And Ambassador Stoeva will be addressing you in the final concluding remarks. We have the executive director of UNFPA, Natalia Kanem, again, a star in the UN, and Doreen Bogdan-Martin, the Secretary General of the International Telecommunication Union, all dear friends and partners. So I'll rest it here. All the best with your discussion, and thank you for this opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, High Rep. We will now hear from His Excellency, Honorable Moses Konkuyu, Minister of Information and Digitalization of the Republic of Malawi, for his opening remarks. Excellency, you have the floor.
A very good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished youths, and ladies and gentlemen. I stand here to make these remarks on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Lazarus Macarthur Chakwera, who is the President of the Republic of Malawi, but also the chairperson of the least developed countries. So the shoes I'm wearing are quite big, but I'll try to fit into them. At the heart of the Doha Programme of Action is the theme of partnership. Partnership between least developed countries and their developing partners, between public and the private sector, between governments and civil society, but most fundamentally, important is the partnership that has brought us here, that is between our different generations. Any solution to the issues facing the least developed countries that does not fully answer the challenges and questions that young people have is no solution at all. Young people are the agents of progress in the least developed countries. They have the right to shape their future, and those in power and have a duty to listen, they must do so and to empower the next generation as well. The voices of the youth must definitely be heard at this conference. Such is the purpose of this intergenerational dialogue that we are having this afternoon, to ensure young people's ideas, solutions, and perspectives are not only taken into account, but are acted upon as work to deliver the Doha Programme of Action. Today, as we are aware, we might be aware, there are over 1.8 billion young people between the ages of 10 and 24, the largest youth generation in history. This represents potential and strength. Potential and strengths are precisely what the world's least developed countries need to realize the ambitions of the Doha Programme of Action. Ladies and gentlemen, by leveraging the democratic dividend, mobilizing young people as agents of progress, we will unleash great power for positive change. It is vital, therefore, that we do this by mainstreaming young representatives into leadership roles and decision-making processes. Kofi Annan used to say that young people needed to be included from birth, that a society that cuts itself off from its youth severs its own lifeline. And so for the Doha Programme to be a lifeline for the least developed countries, young people must be at the heart of its implementation as well as at the end of its goals. LDC5 provides a unique platform for dialogue, and I wish all participants in this intergenerational dialogue will make the most of this opportunity, not only for young people to make their voices heard, but for all of us to empower their role in global decision-making as we prepare together for a brighter future for the most vulnerable and hardest to reach. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my hope that this dialogue will fulfill the aspirations of the young people, to make it more fruitful, and I look forward to seeing the key messages and recommendations in the follow-ups that are to come. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So far from our speakers, we've heard very inspiring things: partnerships, youth empowerment, engagement. But for this part, which is my favorite part, we'll move on to the roundtable discussion on the key role young people play in achieving the SDGs in the world's LDCs. I now invite all roundtable speakers to join us and take their places on the podium. We can give them a round of applause. In this roundtable, young change makers and decision makers will hold an in-depth discussion on a number of topics ranging from youth empowerment, education, and gender equality to climate change. Each speaker will receive 2 questions and will have 2 minutes to answer. Please welcome with us on stage Her Excellency, Ms. Marin Ratnik, Deputy Minister for Economic and Development Affairs of Estonia. His Excellency, Mr. Jurian Middelhoff, Ambassador for Youth, Education and Work from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. Dr. Mohammed Al-Ansari, Strategy Advisor to the Minister of Sports and Youth of the State of Qatar. Dr. Natalia Kanem, Executive Director, UNFPA. Ms. Doreen Bogdan-Martin, Secretary General of the ITU. I now have the pleasure of introducing 5 of the most talented and passionate young people I have ever met. Please welcome our youth delegates, Dercia Sarmento Belo of Timor-Leste, Mr. Tino Daniel Neves of Mozambique, Mr. Prajesh Kanal of Nepal, and last but not least, Ms. Glory Shaba of Malawi. Welcome. And I'll ask you our first question, which is, as reported by the latest ILO statistics, worldwide rates of young people not in education, employment, or training are 30% for young women and 13% for young men. I think we all agree that investing in education and reducing the access gaps by also investing in research development and technology results in more empowered youth. This brings in turn, more prosperous nations. What are some of the most effective ways to make this happen? And I turn to Ms. Doreen Bogdan, who unfortunately has to run after this question.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I must say it's slightly intimidating to be amongst such amazing young people, but it's great to be here, and I want to commend the young people on their brilliant, powerful, and inspiring declaration for all generations. I mean, I think what we need to be focusing on, and I wanted to borrow from the Prime Minister of Bhutan's words this morning, if we don't invest in education, we won't achieve anything. So what can we do? I think bridging the digital divide is something that's absolutely fundamental. The good news is a lot of young people are connected. The bad news is there's 2.7 billion people in the world that are not connected, and we know half the world's schools are not connected. And so I think being very specific, we need to bridge the digital divide. We need to connect all the world's schools so that young people have access to opportunities, information, and choice. We need to bring digital skills, digital literacy to young people, and we need to make sure that that inclusion, that digital inclusion, is meaningful, picking up on the comments of the previous speaker. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. So I do agree, meaningful engagement, but also equitable and equal access, whether in person or digital, especially in our day and age, what we have faced with COVID-19, and post that, rebuilding better together. I now move on to my second question. In 2 days, we will commemorate International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day in advance. The main message will certainly be that much has been done to curb the challenges faced every day by women in LDCs and globally. However, much remains to be done to achieve true and full gender equality. In your context, speakers, what do you see are the biggest and strongest drivers of positive change for women and girls? I will start with Dr. Natalia.
Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here and to emphasize that the biggest drivers are within reach. We're not talking about a moonshot or something that hasn't yet been invented. Equality is a driver. We've heard about equality in resources, including digital resources, but I will also say that access to information and services is a very positive driver. Information in the right hands is very powerful. One of the anxieties that I have leading UNFPA, which is a population fund working on sexual and reproductive health, is the equality in the digital space. We've formed #BodyRight, working with young people to assure that a girl who goes online is going to be respected, is going to be able to engage in the education proposition, which much of which can be virtual these days, without fear. And then lastly, I think what's very empowering is to associate with each other. We're doing that today. But groups like AFRIAN and YPeer are young people's leadership, equipping themselves in order to be able to fulfill their own potential, but also to help their countries to prosper. So these are very important positive drivers, and young people should speak up without the intimidation that can happen online, but they should also be able to dialogue, as you have led today, with those of us who may be older but want to help and also need your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I absolutely agree. Safety. And most importantly, information is power. Knowledge is power. Access to all for both in a safe manner. Acknowledging busy schedules and really appreciating all of you being with us today, I will now turn back to Doreen, who could stay a little longer, and it's great to have your input on this question too. The mic is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, this is a critical topic. When we look at LDCs in particular, only 1 in 5 women is actually connected to the internet. So we got to close that digital gender gap. But it goes beyond just the connectivity. We also need to empower women and girls with the needed digital skills. And once we get them the skills and we get them the connectivity, we need to make sure that their online experience is safe. We've seen, coming back to the previous speaker's comments, the internet is often less safe for women and girls than it is for men. So we need to make sure that online safety is tackled more actively. We need to make sure that the content and the value that you get online is actually relevant and appropriate for women and girls, which means that we have to have women and girls actually creating what they're accessing online. And this comes to my final point about women in STEM, women in STEAM, and women in the tech sector. They're largely underrepresented, and we need to encourage more women and girls to take up careers in the tech sector. And to do that, I think we need more role models, and we need more active participation by governments and also by the tech industry to bring women and girls into the tech workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. And speaking of needing role models, right, I will now turn to our inspiring youth delegates. I'll start with Glory Shaba. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think one of the most important things to consider is to recognize women as active agents of change. We need to include them in our decision-making processes, and we also need to ensure that they have leadership roles. We need to create spaces in which women and girls can thrive, in which they can have meaningful engagement in processes that matter. And I believe one of the ways in which we can achieve this is by having informed women in these spaces. And I believe one of the tools we can use is education. And just to echo the thoughts of Ms. Doreen, I believe education is one of the most important drivers of positive change for women. I will give you an example of someone I know. I did 6 years of medical training in Malawi, and 3 out of those 6 years, I maintained the same roommate. And this roommate, the most interesting thing about her was that she was the only person, the first person in her community to go to college, to make it to university. And she graduated as the first doctor in that community. And I had the chance to interact with some members of her community at an event she hosted, and they talked about her with pride, with joy. This is what happens when you include women in education. This is what happens when you create equal opportunities for both boys as well as girls. You put the girl child at a position of influence, a position at which she can fully achieve her potential. And it starts with including small girls, including women in the small communities in Malawi, the small communities in Zambia, in Timor-Leste, or any other LDC you can think of. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you for sharing the story of your roommate as well. That was very inspiring and touching, and I can definitely relate to that. Women are the drivers of community change, at home and outside of the home. And on meaningful youth engagement, I think that is a central theme to the youth track as well as the youth declaration and what we are doing today on this panel. From that, I will move to Mr. Tino.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tino Daniel. I come from Mozambique. I want to thank for the opportunity to be here. If it's in Portuguese, I will feel very firm. So that challenge that are good, and this is very important opportunity. So I say that because I don't know to speak English. However, I took notes of the main points that I will share in English regarding my topic. So I have been working with men and boys in construction of positive masculinity in order to make male gender understand that men are part of the problems that affect women due to the culture practice and that some have been harmful in the lives of women and girls for its development, reducing the participation of women and girls in decision-making spaces. So the struggle of rural women is poorly visible. Rural feminism still has not space of its place of speech, acting, and struggle is not taken into account, associated with factors such as low level of education and a poor participation in decision-making spaces in Mozambique. I engaged the male gender to advocate for women's rights. Thank you.
I think one inspiring thing that I would take from that is men are part of the solution, especially on topics that relate to equality. I would not say they are the problem. I would say they are part of the solution. I choose to look at the cup half full. So in that sense, congratulations on your work. That's really inspiring what you're doing. Thank you, of course. And with that, we move on to the third question. With just over 7 years left to achieve the ambitions of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, we are still facing the devastating impact of COVID-19 and climate change. This impact has in many cases halted or even regressed the hard-earned progress in least developed countries, as well as landlocked developing countries and small island developing states. We are running short on time, but the Doha Programme of Action has been created to recover the lost progress. Can you speakers share with us some ideas on how young people can meaningfully, I repeat, meaningfully, take part in realizing the Doha Programme of Action? And with that, I'll turn to Dr. Mohammed Al-Ansari.
Well, thank you, Dana. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I'd like to welcome everyone in Qatar, being the only Qatari on this panel. I'm also honored and thrilled to be here, especially having to face the young people who come with their questions and their challenges, asking us, the elders, of how can we support them to improve their lives. Please allow me to address your question from the perspective of our experience here in Qatar. Now, youth, we all been youth, you're youth yourself, and we know that they have natural tendency to get involved. They have the energy, the curiosity, the want, and everything. But they often get faced by the structural challenges that deters them, or like, you know, belittle their eagerness, you know, to do that. What we found is that, you know, the more, I mean, they look at the sincerity of the intentions, you know, when you know, invite them to take part. Is this something that you want to put on for the show, for the headlines, you know, to look with the young people? Or are you sincere in inviting them to actually, you know, lead their own, you know, change, you know, endeavor? And the sincerity and relevance are the buzzwords that, you know, I would like to highlight. This has been our approach in Qatar, and we learned that, you know, with time, that, you know, not only that you need to engage them, but also you need to scaffold their engagement, meaning that you need to facilitate for them, because, you know, everybody says youth have to be part of the policy making. Well, that's a big jargon word. I mean, they don't understand it. You know, even for the specialists, they debate on, well, what do you mean by policy? You know, and how is that different from strategy and things like that? So if you facilitate that, make it relevant to them, make it, as you said, it's meaningful, and what they have in it, and how can they, you know, take part of it, and that respect what they say, even if that is not something that you favor. You see what I mean? It's like, you know, however, this is their decisions. You need to give them that trust and empower them to move on with that. When we were working on developing the national youth policy here in Qatar, the decision was that, you know, we actually should get this right and get, you know, by getting the right, you know, youth representatives on this. And behold, the breadth of, you know, inclusion of that, you know, reached 5,000 young Qatari people of both genders. And our experience, you know, with that was very positive, and the results actually reflected, you know, what they, I mean, their choices and discretions. Now, the second part we found is that, you know, the more concrete, you know, targets you put, the more credible, you know, your reach out is, you know, concrete targets that are linked to, you know, performance indicators, budget, resources, and the like, all of these. That's make it more vivid to them, because they don't want to work with, you know, all these, you know, amorphous, you know, thoughts that, you know, and just to look good in the media. But they want concrete. They want something relevant, you know, to their needs, and actually, you know, has a direct impact on their lives. And but, you know, last but not least, also, you know, I would, you know, focus on, you know, is the ongoing communication. You know, ongoing communication with the young people is very important, just to close the feedback loop, so to speak. What we've done here in Qatar, we have one at the minister level, where we hold an annual youth convention, to which he attends, and have an open discussion with them. We have also what we call Youth Council, which is an elected, you know, a group of young people collected by their colleagues to meet on a monthly basis with the minister and exchange with him their thoughts, their challenges, their ambitions, and also to follow up on what they expect the ministry to do for them. Now, this is a model that we have been, you know, adopting, but this is not to belittle what has been, you know, going on in the country and other organizations as well, other government agencies and the government agencies in town. So, to get them take part of change, you need to work with them, not to work for them. You know, do less of patronizing, more of partnering.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your Excellency, I think you bring up a lot of very important points that we were discussing even prior to coming on stage with the youth delegates. Beyond structure, with intention, beyond patronization, with meaning. Those are very powerful statements, and this is exactly what, well, myself as a youth representative, but also the youth on stage with us today are trying to put forward. And it is important to note that there's a lot of the youth representatives from the council that are also with us in the room, who are very powerful in moving the Qatari community forward. And myself, I've been supported by the Ministry of Youth several times to continue bringing my voice forward on the global platform. So thank you, Dr. I really appreciate all your support. Thank you. With that, I think we move to Darcia.
Yeah, when you are talking about the ideas, I just want to add what other panelists have said. First, we should focus on the education. We must educate ourselves and those around us about the reality on the situation. We must engage in science and look at the evidence of changes that are occurring over time. This is not only about the science or the knowledge, but also about the Doha Programme of Action. So this is what we are talking about here. I don't know about other delegates, but for me, I don't know about the Doha Programme of Action until I came here. So I'm sure that most people out there, especially young people in the LDC, they don't know either. So our priority is we have to make it accessible. We have to make it readable and understandable, especially for those rural areas. Because I always believe that when young people are being informed and being educated, the more they know about these things, the more they care and act. So this should be a priority. Which brings to my second point is investing in youth. So we're talking about the ideas, not only the ideas, but we want action, right? So we want to focus on the knowledge transfer and also funding support. So in order to have a meaningful participation and also the contribution, we have to make the resources, the services available. So here, accessibility and availability is the key. And also I want to add up to my previous point. I want to be something like the concrete action, which of course include youth in the decision-making process. So for example, including them in the youth participatory budgeting. So we're talking about the investing, right? Investing on the youth. So we're talking about the youth participatory budgeting, which is allow young people to submit their ideas, to submit their initiatives to implement their project or their initiatives even in their village or in their neighborhood or schools or in the city. When we allow them to do that, we are not only empower them, but we also boost their participation. And the process should be easy. I know that we also talk about this a lot, about the accessibility and how we get to the opportunities for young people. Sometimes it's really hard. And what we need to focus here, we need to focus on the accessibility, how easy to get that opportunity. Sometimes we look at the young people like ask too much, like as a burden, but of course, we are not the expenditure, we are the investment.
Yes. Yeah. Just to go off of that, I think young people don't ask for too much. I think we ask for too little, in my opinion. And when we ask for our own futures, for the future of our planet, for our communities. And what you're saying about grassroots up is what also Dr. Muhammad mentioned, beyond structuralism. I think that's how you start. You start with grassroots within the communities, and then you work your way up. So I'll connect that to your work. Tino, grassroots, how has that been?
So, according to my opinion, I think young people should handle creative, feminist, innovative, and environmentally friendly actions in the context of energy transition, green job creation, blue entrepreneurship, and recycling. So, about the economic empowerment, access to employment and opportunities for the recovery of the means of people affected by climate change, with special attention to the girl and the women. Yes.
Thank you, Tino. With that, we'll move to the fourth question. The least developed countries category was established in 1971. The Committee for Development Policy assesses LDCs based on indicators of human assets, economic vulnerability, and gross national income per capita, with a particular focus on human assets, Investing in the next generation to meet the criteria can be vital to the graduation of countries from the category. What are some of the measures that can be put in place to invest in the next generation of leaders? And on that, I will turn to Dr. Natalia Kanem.
Well, thanks again, Gemma. Look, everywhere we go in UNFPA, and we work in over 120 countries, young people have said the same thing. Don't underestimate me. Yeah. And we take this seriously because the Doha Programme, the Youth Programme of Action, the Youth Declaration of the Doha Programme of Action really goes hand in hand with the principles that guide our work every day. One of these is to choose what you do wisely, because no one can do everything. And in order to understand how to prioritize, data is important. For real change to happen, everyone has to be seen. You have to be counted. You have to be able to bring your resources to bear, but as you've just alluded to, you also have to ask for things that you don't yet have, but can really transform your life, the life of your community, your country, and hopefully the world. The data systems are important. The health systems are important. The counting and measuring and disaggregation. Not everyone is the same. Yes, male, female, yes, rural, urban, but there's so many other types of important information so that we can actually succeed in helping young people to overcome some of the challenges in front of them. Employment has been mentioned, but another one is having autonomy over your own self, making decisions, being equipped so that you can make a wise decision. And I'll say that it's important for policymakers in this time of so many competing priorities to understand that reproductive health is really fundamental to the well-being of adolescent girls and women, to be counted on the side of advocacy, to say that yes, we have to discuss certain things that we never talked about publicly before. If it's going to prevent a young woman from accessing her education because of poverty, for example, during certain times of the month, we need to be there to support her. Similarly, I think that I appreciate that for the least developed countries, when a girl gets married very young, we count her as a woman who dies during pregnancy and childbirth, but that's really not fair. So we're listening to young people who say, we need to be able to make decisions in concert with our family, with our community, but with the understanding that we want to be able to fulfill our potential. So we never underestimate young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Natalia. I think the key word I would take away from what you just said is autonomy. That's not discussed enough, in my opinion. If anything, it's downplayed when it comes to youth discussions. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for really respecting the autonomy of youth within their communities, within their lives, and their decisions moving forward. And I don't know if you would agree, but I think youth are not the leaders of tomorrow, they're leaders of today. And I think it's time we start changing that narrative around. I now go to Dr. Mohammed Al-Ansari on that same question. Doctor, what can we do and change to invest in the next generation of leaders? The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you once again, Donna. I like what you said, they are the leaders of today, not tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, they probably will be in our places and will be gone. So it's might as well that we invest in this, otherwise we'll be in very bad shape as humans and also as nations. Once again, let me share with you our experience. I mean, one of the models that we have in this town. What we relied on in the Ministry of Sports and Youth is to create champions and agents for change and use them, or put them in action to convey the words and create what can be described as the ripple effect of leadership development. It all depends on what you mean by leadership, but when it comes to that, we define it as the capacity to change, to bring change, and make a difference in your surrounding, in your context, in whatever place you are in. What we've done is that we selected groups of young people, and the selection was done a very rigorous process, because you want the best of the best to start with. And we enroll them in a rather lengthy program of personal and leadership development. This, went through 3 stages. I mean, I will describe it in a very, describe it briefly, but I can also provide more information later for those who are interested to know more about what we've done. So the first stage was focusing on what we call the awareness raising, bringing their attention to explore, and find for themselves who they are, what they want to be, their surroundings, their potentials, the challenges, the ambitions, all of that, and their purpose in life. The first thing is creating the alignment, the self-alignment in life, and actually the outcome of that was a personal statement of a personal purpose, and ensuring that your purpose should always have value to yourself and to the others, whether it's your society or the wider human society. Then after that, we enroll them in an extensive training program. I mean, that took like 3 months, and we repeat that every year. And then the second part or stage on developing their leadership skills, and this has 2 components: the generic skills that everybody should have, the people skills, speaking skills, research, analytical thinking, and things like that. And then there's another one which is more like vertically specialized in different aspects of leadership, like the entrepreneurial leadership, philanthropic leadership. Actually, it's taking place right now as we speak. Public leadership and executive leadership. So there was like self-selection, and that term. And then after that, what we've done, we offered them actually to hire them, through our youth centers. It's a minimal payment, but it's a good, opportunity for them to practice what they have learned and to explore further what, this is not the intern. The internship was, done before that. Some of them did actually, sign up with the youth centers, tens around the countries. Some of them, also worked with the other government agencies or other non-government agencies, and some of them got, into executive positions. So that model that, I just explained, speaks to how do you prepare, the next generation. Start from within, from where they are, and let them, go with that, and then just channel that with the right skills to be what they want to be.
That's very inspiring. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. I would say capacity building, really investing in capacity building, but also going beyond that. What's the next step? We've invested in capacity, we've brought these youth to talk, we've brought these youth to the conferences. I was speaking to Hamza, a youth delegate earlier, and he said, we've done the talking, we've done the declaration, now is time for action. And I think one way of you engaging the youth in Qatar is really giving them the opportunity to act. So thank you, Doctor. That's, as always, very inspiring. Now we move to hear from the youth issues in Estonia. Your Excellency, Ms. Marine Ratnik, the floor is yours. How has the experience been for youth in Estonia? What's been done to invest in them?
Thank you. It's such an inspiration to be here. Why don't you start this conferences with this kind of panels to have more inspiration for the further speaks and talks? I was wondering what to say in that element. There has been underlined one thing that has been crucial for our society, Estonia, that regained its independence in 1991, has been education. Education, 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 and then we can repeat a couple of times more. But not just education as such, but education in different levels and education in the matters that are important for the future skills and for future knowledge. So education is Estonia free, it's obligatory until 16 years, more or less, when you are. But we start teaching, for example, children as early as in kindergarten of engineering and robotics. They are 6, there might be 5, but they get the basic skills because this is the need for the future. But also we have the cross-political agreement, for example, that 1% of Estonian state budget is going to science, research and development. So that also helps us to involve young people into the science, into the engineering. Or we have this innovative private sector startup that has so far 2,000 girls. It focuses on girls. It does kind of experiential robotics and engineering classes, so that they get the skills to be more empowered in the areas which are maybe not yet so natural in the world. But I think also the fact what I wanted to underline is coming back to the history a bit of our country. When we started after regaining independence, 91, we didn't have anything. The country didn't have no skills, nor industry, nor money, nothing. Basically, we started from scratch. And the logic was that many came to tell us what to do and how to build up a state from zero. We decided to do it differently. We decided to go our own path, to maybe overstep or overjump, literally, some of technological elements or technologies that existed that day. So we did a huge tiger leap, as we call it, into the digital society. So my point from it would be that sometimes, sure, it's useful to listen what they tell you, but sometimes it's better to go and choose your own path to be sure what you want to get and then also demand for it.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, what you call a tiger leap, well, of course, on the level of Estonia, I call a leap of faith. We move in faith, we move in spirit, we move with intention. And I think all of these themes are coming together very well in this intergenerational dialogue, just simply understanding that we are all people at the end of the day. Despite where we're coming from, despite the cultural backgrounds, the age difference, you take a leap and you hope someone else meets you halfway and you really make it. So congratulations, that's a very inspiring story on the progression of Estonia. And now from Estonia, we have Qatar, Estonia, and now we move to, last but not least, His Excellency Mr. Julian Middelhoff from the Netherlands. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think by now I don't need to make the point that youth can and does make a huge contribution to development, and I also don't need to repeat all of the facts and stats on why that matters so much. So let me instead share some, for inspiration, how we deal with youth and how we implement it in our development cooperation. So the Netherlands has developed a Youth at Heart youth strategy, which is aimed to put youth at the center of our partnership, our development cooperation. Because, of course, also we want to invest in youth. We don't see it as a cost. We support the next generations, and as co-facilitator of the Declaration of Future Generations, I'm very proud to say generations, by investing in education and skills, youth employment and young entrepreneurship all around the world. And moreover, young people should be able to enter into dialogue with their governments and international partners, but for this, instruments are needed to support role models and youth organizations committed to participation, accountability, and leadership. So that's our third pillar, meaningful youth participation. But what is it about? What is meaningful exactly? It's about ensuring that young people have the opportunity to be involved in the processes of decision-making on policies, strategies, and programs that affect them at all stages of the policy cycles, at all levels. And this implies working with youth as leaders, partners, and beneficiaries, and listening to what matters most to them, with the aim of taking their views, concerns, and suggestions into account in all of our policies, strategies, and programs. And I'm convinced that any organization, any country, any ministry will become a better organization as a result. And in this sense, I strongly and wholeheartedly welcome the Youth Declaration that will be about to be adopted by this conference, and I recommend everybody to read it because there's very, very valuable views and information in it.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. From that, we jump into the fifth question. We touched upon the impact of multiple crises on the hard-earned progress of LDCs. But let's focus on climate change. Here's a plot twist. The least developed countries have been the least responsible for climate change. However, they are the ones who are affected the most. I will use a quote by climate activist Hindu Omaru Ibrahim. If I destroy nature, I destroy myself as well. I lose my dignity. We know that solutions exist, are affordable and realistic. How can development partners, the United Nations, and the governments of LDCs themselves better ensure young people's call for a future without the impact of climate change be made a reality? With that, I will jump to Prajesh.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. See, with your question, I don't think we doubt that future of LDCs rely heavily on how we tackle climate change because we are the most vulnerable to it. But again, the thing that we are missing on is maybe we are a bit ambitious when we are making plans, when we are thinking of working on it. And that ambition, when we get back to our country, when we get into action, as most of my friends are emphasizing, I think we lose on some of those ambitions when you're working on it. So firstly, I believe we need to keep the ambitions high when we are working on it. We need to keep the spirit high. The other thing that we believe is climate change is intersectional. We need to see climate change not as an issue of environment, but we need to see poverty as climate change. We need to see unemployment as climate change. We need to see brain drain, the thing we call as brain drain, people leaving countries. We need to see that as climate change. You see in my village, you come to my village and you ask to homes. There are no youth left in my villages. So where are they? They cannot make a living there. They have left their countries. They are working on. Qatar is a place where many youths from Nepal come, and so to developed countries, so to other countries. They are not leaving their homes in hopes, in aspirations. They are not leaving their homes to get their ambitions. They are leaving their homes to make living because they don't have a choice. And this comes with climate change. We are working on child marriages. I come from background of child rights. This connects with climate change. So climate change, I believe, is intersectional. And basically, when we are working on climate change, I strongly believe that the role of every stakeholders should be to recognize and address this intersectionality. With this, also, we need to prioritize protection of human rights, of especially the vulnerable groups. It could be women, children, LGBTIQA+, people with disabilities. So when we are addressing climate change, when our governments and partners are addressing climate change, these issues of having cross-sectional vulnerabilities, they often miss out. I'll give you an example of Nepal. In Nepal, annually we have some 761 plans and programs happening because there are 753 local governments, some 7 provincial governments, and a federal government. Every year, my country makes more than 760 plans, programs, and budgets. But are they all driven by the same agenda? If we see this in all the LDCs, all the 46 LDCs, and if we include this vision to all our development partners, are we all driven by the same agenda in our plans, programs? Are we all walking to the same end? I doubt. And this is what should be our role, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prajesh. I think the concept of cross-sectionality is something we often overlook because we discuss the thematics, right? That's how we prefer categories. But then we miss out on how the one category truly impacts the other, and then overall, the community at large. So thank you for bringing that up. I now move to Dersia on the question of climate change.
Thank you. Yes, in my opinion, I just want to add what my friend from Nepal has said about youth participation. So I want to strengthen this one again, giving young people a seat at the table. This is very important to determine our future. Of course, this is our future that we're talking about. Not only that, but also provide meaningful collaboration with youth and grassroots organization, an opportunity for voices to be heard. As we all know that based on the stats, today it's approximately 60% of the population in LDC countries is under the age of 25, which means that if we don't include young people in the decision-making, in the policy, in the implementation, which means we don't include more than half of the population voices in the decision. That's why I want to strengthen this one again. And my second point, personally, I've never had a chance to attend a high-level meeting like COP, anything related to climate change, like COP or biodiversity or any other high-level meeting. So today I have a chance, so I want to say it here. So for all the development partners and also the UN and the government, I know that you all have the seat at the table, share with other young leaders, especially from Global North leaders. I'm not blaming here, I just want to ask. So here, I want to ask you that please move or push the climate justice forwards. This is very important. We demand a concrete action. It's not like we're talking, providing a fund to adapt, but we also need a concrete action for the mitigation as well, especially from the Global North. Of course, we are from the Global South. We're doing our part, and we are currently doing it, but we are not the source of the problem. So yeah, stop selling our ecosystem and stop selling our quality of life. So this is really important. I want to say it here because as a young people, I don't want to go to the street and shout for climate justice. I want to be like this, at the table, dialogue and talk and share the ideas, how we all can support each other, how we all can complement each other instead of competing who is doing great, who is doing bad. So that's why I want to encourage all the leaders. If you have a chance, then this is my word I want to say all. And lastly, I want to focus on the investment on the clean energy technology. We all know that technology is really important for the climate change, to address the climate change, and especially in the innovation green energy. We know that as you mentioned, the solution is there. It's already there, but why it's expensive? It's very expensive. It's only for the rich country that can afford it. So if we invest something, make it affordable, make it cheaper. So it's not only rich people can afford it, but us from Global South as well. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that is definitely in line, and your voice is loud and clear, girl. You're probably going to attend another high-level session soon. Thank you. I do have to acknowledge that Dr. Khanim has to leave, so I will quickly shift gears and ask the last question to Dr. Khanim, and then we will revert back. Our last question, which should have gone as planned, is directed to all panelists, but I would really love to hear Dr. Khanim's response. If you have one sentence to summarize the one outcome of this discussion you are taking home, what is your sentence? I know I'm going to love this already.
My one sentence is to show concrete support by funding young people, resourcing, and giving the type of guidance that Dr. Mohammed spoke of. Thank you again for this beautiful opportunity, and it doesn't leave here. It continues in the LDCs, in the Global North, as we've been reminded, and everywhere we go. Thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Doctor. Shifting gears back to climate change. We've heard from Darcia, and I now would like to move on to Your Excellency Marin Ratnik. Your Excellency, we've heard about investing in climate change. It's a discussion that's been going on now for decades, with a lot of commitments, a lot of support, and a lot of youth passion tied to it. So, from your perspective, what can we best do to invest in climate change and really move the needle on that topic?
Thank you. I very much liked you saying, Trisha, that you want to be heard. But I want to say, I think youth has been heard by the fact also that climate change and fighting climate change is one of the topics. I think it's on every meetings that any of us participate, any of us who are part of decision makers. And I think this is one of the very, very relevant topic that we address. Just bring you the example, the European Union has taken many decisions to limit access to the combustible cars, only using electrical cars, to be zero carbon by 2050, I think it's the aim. Just to come back to my own country, we have moved from a very polluting source of energy creating to 40% now being renewables, and we are not stopping there, and that finishes in 2030. So I think there is an absolutely clear understanding that, that we have to do something and not only talking about it, and we are doing it and investing in it. And we are fully aware that the most vulnerable are the countries, many of those in LDCs. You talked about the financing the different technologies. I mean, yes, the technologies might be at the moment expensive, but also technologies, as I have been underlining in many of the panels today, that we about to share our experience, also share the knowledge, and also share the technologies. So we personally, or Estonia is working on several projects in different countries in greening and or bringing also ahead something that is called a twin transition, that goes ahead greener policies with digitalization and vice versa to support exactly that, to fight the climate change. But also we do projects like clean water, electricity, food production, re-greening in deserted areas in different countries, Rwanda, Myanmar, that comes into my mind at the moment. So I think, once again, you are clearly heard, but speak up more. I think that's the best to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. I now move on to Glory. Glory, what's your intake?
I believe that we need to have active youth engagement when it comes to climate change policies. We need to include the youth more. So what I'm hearing is inclusion and support. Include us in your processes. Most of the times, like what was highlighted initially, the policy-making process is quite a lengthy process. It's not 1 + 1 = 2, and we understand that. But most of the times, we're only included at problem identification phase, and we're left out of all the other phases. We're not part of the adoption, the implementation. We don't even take part in the monitoring, the feedback, and everything else that follows. So what we're saying is include us, support our initiatives. There are a lot of people out here, a lot of delegates that have a lot of climate change initiatives. Listen to their stories, and you're going to be motivated. So to all the development partners out here, be encouraged that the support you're giving to the young people out here is not in vain. You're helping them make meaningful change, but we need more of your support.
Thank you, Glory. We conclude this question with you, Your Excellency. Badlov, what's your input?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I want to subscribe what Gloria was saying, but I believe that the interests of worries and ideals of young people are most closely aligned with those of the future generations. And of course, after all, young people will live on this planet the longest and are naturally most engaged with the sustainability of life on it. So through youth participation, we ensure that the representation of future-oriented is present throughout all levels of policy making, and we prioritize solving the causes of global crisis for now and for future generations. So let young people's call for a future without the impact of climate change be a call that is continuously answered by meaningfully, purposefully, and equally including youth in the policy debate and in creating the policies that shape our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. And this is a question that we're moving on to before our concluding question to Youth Delegate Prajesh. Prajesh, you and many other youth delegates are unwavering advocates in the fields of climate action, protection of vulnerable groups, human rights, gender equality, health, and many, 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 many more fields. If you could wish for one special tool to help you transform these issues and deliver a message to decision makers, what would it be?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. So, if I were to wish for one special tool, I believe it would be storytelling and negotiating skills. In this process, we here at the panel at least, we do not doubt that it's necessary to have youth at the table, it's necessary to sit together. But what happens usually, we ask you as in I'm telling to those in the previous generation, we ask you to have us at the table, and you tell us you are not ready yet. Here, I believe we need to take engagement and empowerment together. We need youth engagement for youth empowerment, and we need youth empowerment for meaningful youth engagement. So, to this comes on the table only when we are capable to tell that we need it. Here, I see my young delegates from different countries. They have been working on new perspectives, new ideas, and they have new experiences that could tackle the most complex of problems that we are working on. We have that reach to our local communities that neither our governments could take nor the UN could take, because we are connected with the grassroots. And these experiences, these programs that we are taking on, I think if we could bring these experiences with your experiences of life, your experiences of the world, and when these two come in cohesion, I think there's a lot we could do together. So if I were to ask for that one special tool, I believe it'll be us to tell our stories, us to tell our things, and negotiate with you on the table, because I want you to trust us. Let's sit on that same table and discuss our future. It's not our future, it's the future of us all.
Wow.
Thank you.
On that note, on stories and faces, I just want to do something that's completely off script. I want to ask the youth delegates with us in the room right now to just stand up. These, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if this is viewed on live, but these are the faces, these are the stories, these are the people who have worked tirelessly, passionately the past few days from different parts of the LDCs to bring you the declaration forward. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you all. You've inspired me, and you've inspired the declaration, you've inspired our speakers. Thank you, Prajesh, for that. I now want to move to our last question, which you all know. I have asked Dr. Khanim previously. You have one sentence to summarize the one outcome of this discussion you are taking home. What is your sentence? We'll start with Dr. Mohammed.
Okay, at the beginning, please allow me to second what Dr. Natalia, said, I mean, in complimenting your leadership of this session. I like how you synthesized our ideas. And you probably made me sound smarter. Anyway, I think one sentence, take away from this, and then just, revisit some of the ideas I shared with you, is that to ensure sustainable and effective youth development, you need to work with them, not on behalf of them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Now we move right next door. Tony, what's your sentence?
My sentence is increase the resilience of women and girls against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you ask me one thing that I'm taking from here, I'm taking hope. I'm taking hope that we will lead to our ambitions, and I'm taking a hope that we will be there with you together every time we are discussing on us. Thank you.
Thank you.
How can you be against hope? Okay, I wrote down 2 quotes that were fighting for, that I'm taking home with me. So someone said that young people are always telling us, don't underestimate us. I'm definitely taking that one home. I'm also taking home, we are not the expenditure, we're the investment. I've noted that one down. But what the message I want the audience to take home is include youth meaningfully, because it will make your organization better.
Your Excellency, I believe both sentences were Darcia's, and she was very excited when you were leaving them. Your neighbor right next door. Thank you, Your Excellency. Go ahead.
For me, I would say to young people out there that through this intergenerational dialogue, I can say that there is a hope, as my friend has said, and we are heard, and we are considered. We need to do more. Thank you.
Thank you. I was inspired by the sentence that you are the leaders of today, not of tomorrow. Therefore, lead by example. Engage yourself and demand to be involved, and don't stop at no or it cannot be done.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
My take-home sentence today is transformative change can only happen when we realize that we're equal players, and therefore we need equal exposure to opportunities and spaces where we can equally contribute to sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, we have concluded the amazing roundtable. Let's give all our speakers a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. As our panelists exit, we will now prepare for my favorite part of the discussion. Not really my favorite part, I would say my second favorite part after what we just heard, which will be the introduction of the Youth Declaration. 2 days ago, on the 4th of March, youth delegates from the world's 46 least developed countries came together in the LDC5 Youth Forum. I believe in this very room as well. During this event, they adopted a very important document called For All Generations, a youth declaration to LDC5. This document represents a vision in which young people in the least developed countries are empowered to achieve their full potential, enjoying their human rights and contributing as agents of change to the benefit of everyone, everywhere. It also represents young people's commitment to taking a proactive role in the implementation, monitoring and evaluation of the Doha Programme of Action, collaborating and championing on an equal, fair, resilient, and sustainable role. The Youth Declaration is the outcome of a series of consultations with young people from the world's 46 LDCs. The consultations were led by the Major Group for Children and Youth and the International Committee Meeting of Youth Organizations. They were coordinated by the UN OHRLLS and supported by the members of the LDC5 Youth Engagement Group. As a symbol of strong connection between the Youth Declaration and the Doha Programme of Action, the 2 representatives who spearheaded the consultations and negotiations that led to the declaration will hand over for all generations to Ms. Heidi Schrodes-Fox, Director of the Office of the High Representative for the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, and Deputy Secretary General of the 5th United Nations Conference on the Least Developed Countries. We will now have Ms. Mwinji Nachinga, Coordinator of the Major Group for Children and Youth, and Mr. Benson Makusha, Pan-Africa Coordinator, International Committee Meeting of Youth Organizations. Can you please all rise in solidarity for this handover? Let us all remember this moment. This is where young people's passion and commitment became a lasting part of the Doha Programme of Action. Finally, allow me to introduce today's last speaker. Please welcome Her Excellency, Ms. Lachezara Shtoeva, President of the Economic and Social Council. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you today and to listen to this inspiring discussion. I had pre-prepared remarks, but I'm not going to go with them. I just was very inspired by the discussion we heard, and I have a few takeaways. And the first one is that you all want a seat at the table, and you deserve a seat at the table. We talked about the future, but actually, we need empowered youth today because the present is our future. The current present determines the future. Without empowered youth in the present, we cannot have a good future. Those are not going to be good adults. So be proactive, be vocal, and demand your seat at the table. As president of ECOSOC, I have committed to include youth panelists at all the events we're having throughout the ECOSOC session, including the OHRLLS. So we will be reaching out to youth delegates and youth representatives in order to be able to have your voice heard at the table. And in order to achieve the SDGs and the Doha Programme of Action, we all need you. So you have a partner in our face. Be strong, be committed, be ambitious, and be inspiring as you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It's heartwarming to know that we inspired you enough to completely abandon a very well-written script and speak from the heart. I think that's where the best commitments really do come from. Thank you, Your Excellency. On that note, we close our session, inspired by the meaningful discussions we had and full of hope and solidarity for the way forward paved by the Youth Declaration and the Doha Programme of Action. Before closing, I would like to give a special shout out to someone very dear to myself and all the youth delegates, Mr. Nicolas Ciolin. Mr. Nicolas Ciolin is the Youth Engagement Lead for the United Nations Office of the High Rep for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States. Nicolas, I'm completely abandoning the script. Thank you. Thank you. It takes people really ensuring that there is meaningful engagement from their heart to show you what we have put on today. So thank you, Nicolas, for all that you've done for us. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, youth around the world, this was the LDC5 Intergenerational Dialogue. Thank you so much for joining us.